Let's go. Matt Tuck,
Hello, sir.
thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so our first non-CrossFit centric guest. So
I feel honored and blessed right now.
you should. It's a big moment. It's a big moment. So just for those, obviously, we are predominantly in the CrossFit space. Our podcast transcend a few different areas. But for those that don't know, can we do a brief intro on you before we then delve into your full journey, if that's okay?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm Mike Tuck, and I am a former professional basketball player, primarily with the Sheffield Sharks. Um, During my time, competed in the British Basketball League. I was captain for them. I also captained England at the Commonwealth
Come on,
Games
England.
2018. And now I'm a marketing manager for the Sheffield Sharks, the Sheffield Hatters, and the Cannon Medical Arena. And I'm also the University of Sheffield head men's basketball coach. And I did a small stint on a trash reality TV show. So
We've got a lot to go
yeah,
through.
there's many layers over here.
And you called it a trash reality TV show, so they're
Yeah.
probably not going to have your back. So I've asked Mike to come on predominantly because he's got an interesting story, but also because you've done all, there's no professional athletes out there that have done anything without grafting, without motivation, without doing whatever it takes to get by and to survive and to just keep moving forward. And that is one of the things that we sort of want to talk about a lot on this podcast, because people that listen to us and people that watch us seem to like those stories. And, when you're around those people, when you talk to people that have that mindset, you always pick up a little nugget of something that can either help you in your life, motivate you a little more, or take with you just to be better. So people are going to see that watch this are going to see us engaging with more guests from a variety of areas, because the message is the same when it comes down to motivation and hard work. Then everybody has a similar story, and we think that that's really valuable. So that's why you're on, mate.
Hence I'm here.
So do it justice.
I'll try my best.
So, interestingly, then, so obviously we talked about you, in your intro, professional basketball player. So, how does that journey start? You growing up. How do you end up in that?
Yeah, well, obviously from my accent, you can tell that I'm not from Sheffield. I'm not British, but well, I am British. I have a British passport, but originally from Canada, born and raised in Toronto, Canada. My mom was born in the UK and then emigrated to Canada when she was 16. My dad was Canadian, and yeah, born in Toronto, and was always the tallest kid in my class. I played loads of different sports kind of growing up, but my dad, when he kind of started realizing that I was, about this high above all the other kids in the class, he was like, "You're going to play basketball." And my dad wasn't a big basketball player, but he played a little bit in high school. But he was the one who put the ball in my hand, and it was kind of from about 9 or 10 years old. It was just every weekend we're going to basketball tournaments, we're going to play. He was signing me up for as many teams as I could play for, and I just took a natural liking to it. And I think, my dad was, a very athletic guy when he was younger. He played a lot of American football,
Yeah.
To a decent level, and I think he wanted me to kind of, get into sports. And I don't think it mattered which one. It was just like finding the one that I had the most passion for, and that was basketball. So from there, just started playing.
So from that early age, were you showing signs that obviously you'll just have heard the stories because you won't know you're in the moment, you're enjoying the game, but were you a cut above them? Was it obviously?
Yeah, I think obviously the height thing really helped me, and then also the fact that I had had a talent for it, had a knack for it, and then the biggest thing I think was that I had a passion for it. I don't think my dad would have pushed me so hard into it if he knew that I didn't love it, and that's always something that we always say in basketball. Especially when you get to the professional level, you have to love it, because there's going to be times where you absolutely hate it. Those early morning practices or early morning grind, all those things. But yeah, so at a young age, I really loved it. And my dad, pushed me, and I was really lucky early in my career. I met a coach whose son was the same age as me, and he coached at one of the local high schools in our area. And I was almost kind of poached and recruited to go to that high school, because I was supposed to go to the Catholic high school, and I ended up going to the public high school, to play alongside his son. And from that, we kind of built this team and this nucleus where we were, we were the white suburban team, but our coach was kind of taking us down to all these tournaments down in the inner city, down to like big high schools, where we were kind of, the white boys walking in, and everyone didn't expect much from us, but then we were a talented group, so we were winning tournaments. We were, we were always ranked in the top 10 or 5 schools in the city in Toronto at the time, which was a pretty big deal. So it was kind of from that moment was when I always kind of grew this underdog mentality. I think it started from a very young age.
What, tell me I can't and I will, sort of.
Yeah, and just being like, there would be gyms we'd walk into getting laughed at and stuff like that, and then we'd blow them out by 30, and it would be like, all right, so I think that underdog mentality was that's where it kind of started there. Also, being Canadian as well. At the time, America was known as the powerhouse for basketball, right? And we were, Canadian kids, and there was times we'd go down to American tournaments, and it was the same thing. Like they'd be kind of like, "Oh, Canada, like what's that place? Like way up north, right?" Kind of
get back to the hockey rink.
Yeah, exactly. But kind of similar. I guess you would compare it in the UK to like a northerner mentality compared to like a southerner, right? Northerners, blue collar, hardworking, and always trying to kind of prove something, and southerners always just like, northern monkeys or whatever. So
definitely feel
that. So I think that was instilled in me from that age, and did really well in high school. Was made co-captain of the team, and then we just won a lot of tournaments and very successful. And I was lucky enough to get a athletic scholarship to a university in the States off the back of that. I went to Loyola, Maryland, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. And had a great experience there. It was a Division I school, so it's NCAA Division I. So it's like the highest level of collegiate basketball that you can play in the States. And it was great. I had a very charismatic and interesting head coach there, Jimmy Patsos. He was not your typical coach. He was very rough around the edges, and he said it how it was. And I was lucky to have that, because I think it kind of fit my style of play, and also I think he taught lessons like the hard way. He didn't sugarcoat anything, and he got in your face, and that's how it was. So I think that I learned a lot of lessons from that in terms of perseverance and fighting through different things, and learning how to manage personalities, I guess. And then also living in Baltimore, Maryland was a very interesting experience.
I've been there once.
Yes. So, coming from a kid who's, from Canada, from, a half decent area, going to Baltimore, where it was always like top 3 murder rates in the United States. And, we had teammates from Baltimore, and just hearing their stories and seeing the conditions that they had to grow up in, and the different challenges of life. So I had a really well-rounded experience, going there, because, there was kids from, high, really nice backgrounds, and much, more well-off families than me. And then I met kids who had, guns in their dorm rooms, because they were in the wrong side of town. So it was
Did you find with those kids that were from like maybe the wrong side of town, were they the ones that laid it all on the line for the cause because it was their shot to get out of that? Or was it the other way, where they were like, they thought, I don't know, because it can go one way or other when you brought up like that. And
I think to make it to that level, like on the court, I think no matter what background you were from, everybody had a similar drive to them. Now, some guys would give up easier than others, but I think definitely those kids that were from Baltimore, they didn't have much give up in them, because they knew that, there wasn't a lot of other opportunities or options for them. So I think that there was a lot of fight there, not a lot of other things to fall back on. So basketball was like a huge priority for them. In terms of off the court, there was all types of shenanigans going on. But yeah, like I said, I think it was a great learning experience for me. Had a great career there. Ended up being co-captain of that team as well. And then, when I finished there, I ended up, I wanted to continue playing basketball. That summer, I was eligible for the NBA draft. When you first graduate from university in the States, you're eligible for that draft year, and when they do the draft. And I was lucky enough to get a call up to go to the Toronto Raptors, a draft workout with the Toronto Raptors, which was very interesting because I showed up. There's like 6 guys there, and it was just like it was intense. Like it was the highest level of basketball I've ever been to. And
so when you get there and there's just 6 guys, what are they doing? They're just putting you through drills.
Yeah, exactly. So you show up right off the bat. You're getting measured. They're weighing you. They're measuring your height. They're measuring your wingspan, and then you're doing like fitness testing. So how many pull-ups you can do, how many bench press you can do, your vertical. All different types, and everything's being recorded there. And the second you walk in the gym, everything's being recorded. And I think even like in terms of your personality and all those things, that like there's people watching you. There's an entire coaching staff there making notes. You're doing sprint testing as well, seeing how quick you can get up and down the court. Just sprinting with a basketball, right-handed, left-handed, everything being recorded. They're getting the times. And then from there, you're going into drills. You're going into shooting drills where they're recording your makes and your misses. And so it was like very, very intense. I was used to a high level in NCAA, but this was like just that next step up where I was like, but also the next step up was in terms of like the height, weight, athleticism. Like I was, I went from being like one of the biggest guys on my team in the States to being the shortest guy at this tryout. And I'm like going from being like a power forward, which typically is more around the basket, rebounding, setting screens, to I had to play point guard when we went into breakdown like scrimmage games. So like I'm bringing the ball up the floor, I'm like, oh, I felt out of my depth. But obviously I didn't make the NBA from that trial. But what did happen was that the head coach of Team Canada was at the trial, and his name was Leo Routens, and he came up to me and he was like, "Who are you, and why don't we know about you?" And from that trial, he sent me. Team Canada was actually working out at the same time at a different gym. So I literally went from that trial to I was on the Team Canada developmental team, like right after that workout. And kind of one of those things where it was just right place, right time, right? And when, sometimes it's just all about showing up. So ended up, playing for Team Canada, the developmental team, Team Canada, for 2 summers under Leo Routens. Leo Routens introduced me to my agent. Obviously wanted to continue my basketball journey. And through my agent, he got me my first professional gig in Europe, which was in Cyprus. So
it's pretty big out there, basketball, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely growing in the UK, and it's getting a bigger name behind it. But if you go to mainland Europe, pretty much every country has its own leagues and multiple leagues, tiered system, 1, 2, 3, or whatever.
You find that, no one really seems to know about it. And then the Olympics come around, and Team USA don't have it all their own way, and everyone's like, how did Serbia do so well? And it's like, well, they've got some of the best players, but also, if you've seen the games in Serbia, all the guys with the flares, it's crazy.
It's insane. And I would love to see that grow over here, and more in the west side of Europe, because the further east you go, it's kind of like the football fans as well. The further east you go, just the more crazy they get. You watch the games in Greece or in anywhere in Yugoslavia. So, but that was kind of the vibe in Cyprus. It was like, the teams that you played on, if they had a football team as well, all those football fans would come to the basketball games. Right. So we would have these huge games where it would be like maybe like 5,000 people inside of a gym, all with their shirts off, a guy at the front with a big drum, flares, they're all screaming, they're flicking coins and lit cigarettes on the court. Like, it was just like absolutely insane.
So how old are you at this point?
I was 24?
So 24, like probably first sort of time out of Canada, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Well, obviously I've been to the States, and then I traveled a bit with other teams, but this first time like in Cyprus, and it was just like, this is like eye-opening. Like, it was one of the only places I played where they had the guards up over your bench, because the fans would come and try and spit on you. And one of the games we had, it happened where our bench manager was sitting on the end, and there wasn't enough room underneath the guard, and we looked over and his shoulders are just soaking wet from the fans spitting on. So
There's
yeah,
some passion out there.
yeah, exactly. But
if you can call it passion,
just eye-opening, right? Like it was, for a tall, lanky kid from Canada, and I'm all of a sudden in Cyprus, and there's just a stadium full of smoke and cigarettes being flicked on the court, and just drums and screaming. It's so loud you can't even hear yourself think. So it was just
but again,
very
it's that
interesting.
resilience again, isn't it? You're having to withstand that and sort of endure that. Not you wanted to play basketball, but to do it in a sort of intimidating environment and it not take you out your stride. Again, that's a sort of mentality and a mindset thing,
no, exactly. And I think I've taken little bits from every different place that I've played, and that was definitely my first year as a pro, getting thrown into the fire, into a situation like that. So and then obviously you're not only that, but you're dealing with new people, a new country, a new culture. You're my first head coach didn't speak great English, so there's that language barrier there. Trying to learn how to navigate that every day in practice, but also in the game when situations are tough. And then your teammates as well, right? Like you're on a team of 10 to 12 guys. Typically, depending on what league you're in, you can either have like 1, 2, 3, sometimes up to 4 or 5 import players, which are typically like Americans or Canadians, but then the rest are the homegrown, like the domestic talent. So, and everybody's fighting for minutes.
So I was going to say that. So do they embrace you guys? Because obviously, no disrespect to them, but you're probably bringing a little bit more in terms of ability. But then, do they embrace that because you bring in ability, or do they push back because you're taking their minutes? Is it how does it work?
It depends on where you play, because I've had both. I've had teams where I've gone on and I've made friends for life, and I've built up great relationships with the domestic guys. And then I've had teams like, for example, I played in France, and growing up in Canada, it's a bilingual country.
Yeah.
We take French growing up. Now, did I retain any of that? Not much, but I knew enough to kind of I could understand most of it, but not speak it. And we'd be in the locker room, and I'd hear guys on the team talking trash about me and the other import on the team, and I'd be like, "Oh man, like I'm sitting right here, dude."
And they didn't really know that you could understand
it. No, exactly. So there's been situations where guys, there'll be guys that are haters, and there's animosity because they want your spot, they want your minutes, and they think maybe stuff is handed to you. But then also it's like, yeah, well, I earned my spot here. Like I built this reputation for myself. My work ethic has got me here. So
I think the people like that, that's like you've taken a risk, you've left your homeland, you've gone there. Yeah. So like people that want to, I don't know, hate on people that are trying to do something. I always find that difficult, because it's like, if you're that don't worry about me, worry about you. Mm-hmm. If you do the right things and you put the minutes in, you'll get your time. But if all you want to do is take from me, you're not getting anywhere yourself, which is really what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a weird landscape, because I went from going to a university where it's very much like a brotherhood, where everybody's fighting for minutes, but we are working towards this common goal, and there is a hierarchy system in there. If you're a fourth year player, you've earned your minutes because you've been there, you've earned your stripes. And where I went to the professional level, it's much more dog eat dog world, like because everybody is trying to put food on the table, everybody's trying to level up their contracts year by year. So you can see where that athlete instinct and that killer instinct comes in, and guys have to do what they have to do, and it's depending on the team and the situation, it can be much more individual rather than team, because guys are fighting to get their own.
I guess that's why you just need a good, strong coach and support team around.
And I think that's completely it. Like if you have a good coaching staff, a good front office staff, a good culture, and then a good captain, then it goes a long way. And I have played in situations where we've had that, specifically here, at the Sheffield Sharks. Playing them for years, we had our ups and our downs, but I think the front office always did a good job of trying to put those things in place so that it made everything easier for everybody else.
Yeah, well, that brings us nicely on to the Sharks, and I guess.
Yeah.
So what was you 2008, 2009?
2009, 2010 was my first season. And again, it was one of those ones where I had been kind of bouncing around Europe a bit, and I only thought that I would be here for one season.
Yeah.
I got here and we won the cup mid-season, my first season. And then we ended up finishing second or third in the league that year. And I was just like, I got that taste of silverware, and I was like, oh, so they offered me to come back for another season. So I was like, yeah, well, man.
Is that just rolling contracts then year to year?
So yeah, typically in professional basketball, most guys will just sign a 1-year contract.
Is that for your benefit as much as the club, so that you can keep your
I think on both sides, because you want to give yourself a little bit of freedom depending on where you're at in your career and what level of player you are. You want to give yourself freedom, because like if you do have a good season, you don't want to be locked in at the same paycheck. You want to be able to go and find a bigger club and get a better paycheck or a better situation. And also for the clubs as well, right? Like I've seen situations where they've locked themselves into a multi-year contract with a guy that maybe you'll have a good season, and then he gets that second or third season. It's like, oh, who is this guy? Or he's too comfortable now, or whatever. So I think typically you'll see it across the board that in basketball, most guys will sign a 1-year. So at the time I signed it a second year. We won back-to-back cups. We ended up going to the playoff finals and losing by 7. So from there I was like, I'm in. And then after that, I ended up signing a 3-year contract. I signed 2 3-year contracts back to back after that. And then after that, another 2-year. And then it was like 1 or whatever. So I ended up playing at the club for 13 seasons. So I'm the longest ever tenured player at the Sharks. And
that must be cool.
Got a couple records. I got point scoring record, rebound record, and most games played. So yeah,
for 500, wasn't it?
Yeah, 500. So for a guy who kind of just showed up here, and this was just going to be another little pit stop to fast forward to having that kind of career here.
And walking up, we've walked up to this room where we're having the meeting. You're like on the walls in frames. You're like, you're a pretty big deal around here.
It's just to me, I just feel like I'm part of the furniture now. You know what I mean? Because I've been here so long. But I think, it's something definitely I'll hold very dear to my heart. Like I feel very special, very blessed to have been a part of this. And obviously no player is ever bigger than a club, but like I've come here and I've made an impression with this club, and I have them all to thank for it, specifically the front office staff here, that Sarah Bakovich, Yuri Madison, Atiba Lyons, the head coach. They all put their faith in me to keep saying yes to coming back. And that was I guess part of the early part of my career here is that I came just as a normal player, right? And then on my 3rd year, when I signed that 3-year contract, they asked me to be the club captain as well. So, and that wasn't necessarily a position that I was gunning for. I didn't, it's not like I asked for it, and I didn't put myself out there or anything. They kind of just saw it in me and asked me to do it.
So when you talk about a captain in basketball, like the only sport I've really played is football, and the captain doesn't really have that much influence. I feel like in American sports, the captain's much more ingrained in the culture of the club. Is that the same in basketball in the UK? Is it much more of a sort of almost like a mini coaching role as much as anything?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's bigger than football or whatever, but I would say that it's a respected role. And I think that when you're club captain, it's not just like being a normal player. I think, when you're a normal player, like, it's easier to switch off, and you kind of just show up, do your time, and get out, depending on what kind of player you are. Whereas when you're captain, it's more, you're thinking about the game and the guys and the culture a lot more than you would be if you're just a normal player. You're trying to be an extension of the coaching staff. You're trying to help build a healthy culture. You're having a couple more conversations with guys behind the scenes. You're trying to be a bit more of a mentor. Keep the unity of the club together. And then, just being a good communicator and like I said, like an extension of the club. So you'd be having more conversations with the head coach than just the average player, because you're trying to get what they're trying to get across, and keep the mentality of the club heading in the right direction, right?
Yeah. So over that, you've been here 13 years as a player.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go about? I know it's probably step by step, but you sustain a career at the top level in this country for that long. Like, what are the sacrifices? How do you keep the motivation? You know, what are you doing training wise? How do you sustain that for that long? Because it's a high impact. It's multiple games a season.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So how
Yeah.
did you stay?
Well, like I brushed on this earlier, but I've always said this when people have asked me about like being a pro basketball player, and I said always the first thing I always say is that you have to love it, because it's not all roses, right? It's not easy, and I think a lot of people just see the games on TV or the social media stuff, and it's just glorified. But what the stuff that they don't see is when, the early morning practices, the sprints, preseason, the hours in the weight room, the grind of practice over, an 8-9 month season, and every day, sometimes 2 practices a day coming in, and the blood, sweat, and tears, and then also psychologically, going through losing games, coach getting down on you, dysfunction within the team. There is,
Shit from the fans, I guess, on occasion as well.
I've had death threats in my DMs
Really?
from fans before. Yeah, so
they definitely lost some money on that game.
yeah, exactly. It always came after losses.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pressure from the club, the pressure from the fans, those are always huge things. And then in terms of sacrifice, I've left home. I'm away from my family. I'm away from my kind of support network. You give up, every weekend of your life, because you're traveling up and down the country. You're on, we used to go back and forth to Plymouth, to Glasgow. Those are like, 5-hour like bus rides.
Yeah.
So you're sacrificing a lot of your time and your energy towards the sport. But I loved it,
Yeah.
and that was part of my thing. I loved it, and that's what drove me. I couldn't see myself doing anything else, and I wanted to be a part of that, and I wanted to, keep that, and it was a big part of my identity as well. So that's probably why I did it so long. I played until I was like 39, which is not a lot of guys will do that. So, but yeah, there is a lot of sacrifice behind the scenes.
So when you love the sport, obviously, do you think it's enough to love the sport? Do you think you have to love the grind as well? You must separate that out somewhat. Because
No, that's exactly it. And when I say you have to love it, it's like, it's not just, I love playing basketball. It's like, I love going to the gym at 6 a.m.
I love doing what other people can't. So.
Yeah, I love, like, and there's days when you don't love it, obviously, but then one of my things, and it's not the best thing, but I always said, fake it till you make it, because there'd be times where I didn't want to be in there. But because I was captain, and because I was trying to I'd be in there clapping and yelling and hollering, and like some of the other guys would just hate me, because they'd be like, "Shut up! Like, no, we don't want to be here." And I'd be like, "Yeah, no, we love it. We love it." And like, I'm trying to psych myself out. It wasn't for those guys, really. I was just trying to get myself going, because I needed to put my mind in that place. But I think no one would ever regret those workouts after, because you put those in the bank, and then it always paid off. Those teams that always were more unified and behind the scenes and in practice were always the ones that we had more success.
And I like that you said that regret never comes, does it? You never regret doing a workout. You will always regret not doing one.
100%. The shame of not doing it, or staying in bed, pressing the snooze button. I mean, obviously, it's the hardest part is just getting out of bed and showing up, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of it, once you get there, it's just that's the biggest thing. It's like making sure that you get there. But the guys that do get there, you're never going to regret that.
No. So you talked about playing up until you were 39. Was that because you loved the sport so much? Was that because you were scared of what came after? Was that because, I don't know, like, that's a long career. And I know another guy that was a professional rugby player. And I know when he retired, he found it very difficult, because your life's pretty structured. You got to train at this time. Everyone tells you where to be, when to be there. And then you kind of go out into the big bad world after that. Not only are you not doing something that you love every day, you then got to sort of figure yourself out again. How did you find that period?
Yeah, that was same with me. Like, it was scary. And I think there was probably a small part of me that was like, I wanted to keep playing because didn't know what was next, and I didn't know what else to be, right? Like it becomes such a big part of your identity. I mean, I've been retired, going into my third season now, and I've still once in a while will go out somewhere or whatever and be recognized as, you're the basketball player.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just ingrained as part of your identity. And I was lucky enough that the club kind of reached out to me halfway through my career here, and they known I had done a marketing degree in college. So we had a sponsor that was actually had just, when they were going into the sponsorship meetings with the sponsor, they had let go of their marketing manager, and they were looking for a new one. So obviously, all of a sudden, my name came up. So I started working for Wasco Brown Solicitors, a law firm in Sheffield, as their marketing manager. I did that for about 3 years, and I was doing that part time while I was still playing, and learning how to manage all that stuff was extremely tough at the time because it was when I was in my prime as well. But it obviously, helped me out greatly because it gave me that experience in the real world, in a completely different, like in the law sector, which I had, nothing to really much, not a lot of knowledge with, but a great learning experience for me, a great opportunity for me, and that gave me a lot of confidence off the court, and also just time to build up skills that I needed once my basketball career was over. So I was kind of putting in that work behind the scenes from about 2014, 2015. So it was like a long time. And then that ended, and I ended up moving over into the Sharks. So I was doing the Sharks market manager as the Sharks part-time as well. So I think I had kind of put stuff in the bank, hours in the bank, before I had retired full time, so that I had built up some skill sets, and I built up a network, and built up relationships, and just learned how to work in an office, and that kind of culture before I retired. So I think I was very lucky that I had a club that was pushed me in that direction to try and set me up for my post-playing career, and then also gave me an opportunity to do stuff with them as well, and work in a sport that I know really well and I love, and something I really enjoy doing. I love coming to work every day.
And I love that. I love that along the way, even as far back as 2014, 15, you're starting to realize, right, this has a shelf life.
Yeah.
And I'm not just going to get to the end of my career and be like a complete victim.
Yeah.
You're already starting to recognize that you need to do more. And that's, I think, it's hard to do that, isn't it? Like, as a professional athlete, because
Definitely.
Not only are you doing two things alongside each other, which are both very difficult in their own right, but it's also almost admitting that you are human and one day this is going to end.
Yeah.
So how can I be prepared?
And that was tough, like, realizing that it's all going to end, because it's something like we talked about before. I've done it since I was like 9-10 years old. It was my identity. I was, Mike Tuck, the basketball player. So building that next identity was something that was always humming in the background. And like I said, very lucky that I had an organization and people around me that were kind of like helping me build that for myself. And we kind of talked about it off camera. Like, I'm the marketing manager here, and I love it. But like, it's also like I've only been retired for 2 years now. I'm still kind of fresh out into this new world of like being a full-time worker, and it's still like there is times where I'm like, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and it's kind of exciting time, right? But
it is if you have that mentality of that the world's my oyster, as opposed to oh shit. Because there is opportunities everywhere.
Definitely. And I think I've seen a lot of players where they didn't set themselves up in the right way. And whether by retirement by their own choice, or retirement by an injury, or the club just doesn't pick up the phone after a couple of years, and then they have to kind of go back and start at the bottom of the pile again. So
it's interesting you say that, because isn't the NBA obviously in the States, doesn't that have the highest rate of bankrupt previous players than any?
I think so. It might be NFL or NBA, but like most of those sports over there, like a lot of those guys aren't financially literate. And I think even for me, early days in my career, I signed my first contract, and it was like decent, and I was just like, oh, this is what it is, and this is going to last forever, and I'm just going to go out, and then you realize quite quickly, like, oh, this doesn't last forever, and like you know, like, but you're like, my first couple of years, you're out there blowing money that, you know, I wish now, oh gosh, should put some of that away.
But everybody did that. It
Yeah.
didn't matter. You just had more money to blow. Like,
Yeah.
I remember 18 putting stuff on a credit card. I didn't even know how it worked. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It wasn't even my money.
Yeah. So you learn a lot of lessons along the way, that's for sure. Obviously, you mature as you get older too.
Oh, well, maybe. So if we look back at your career before we talk about a few of the bits you've done after, what would you say is your biggest achievement?
Well, there's two things I always because I get asked this question quite a lot.
Oh, not just boring, am I?
No, well, yeah, but
yeah, cool.
The first one is in 2018. I got obviously, because my mother was English, I have a British passport, and obviously I've lived here for eons now. But I got selected for Team England for the Commonwealth Games, and you know, was very lucky to make it through the trials, and then went to the Gold Coast with the team, and I was selected as captain when we were down in after the training camp. So that was always something I was really proud of, proud moment. My mom came down to the Gold Coast to watch me play. It was just like really everything kind of came together. Unfortunately, we didn't medal, but it was just like the overall experience, and being named captain was something I always cherished for the rest of my life. But the pinnacle, or the biggest moment of my career, is definitely here with the Sheffield Sharks, and it was the 2016 playoff finals. We made to the final. We were playing Leicester Riders, who had an incredible season. I think they'd only lost about 4 or 5 games all season that year. And then we played them at the O2 in London, so in front of about, I think, 15 or 18,000 fans. So and we won. And again, as an underdog, you know, we came out there, and that was just, everything kind of clicked the right way that year. And you know, it was probably my prime. You know, when everything mentally and physically, everything just was like at the perfect moment for me. And ended up having a huge game, 20 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and got MVP of the game, most valuable player.
Better, does it?
Yeah. So, you know, like, there's nothing, I can't explain that feeling of winning something like that. The last game of the season, playoff final at, you know, 20,000 seater arena with, you know, thousands of your screaming fans in front of you, and you're raising up a trophy above your head. Like, there's nothing better than, you know, like drugs, sex, rock and roll, nothing better than that. So
the
yeah.
natural highs, nothing beats.
No, exactly. High. Yeah, and like similar to, like, you know, CrossFit world and all that. Like, you know, that feeling you get after working out, like, it's just it's a high in itself. So
I was talking to the best CrossFitter in the UK, the best male CrossFitter, and he was saying the same. He was saying, like, he stopped, like, he didn't drink that much anyway, but he stopped doing all that stuff. And then, like, you know, qualifying for the CrossFit Games as the fittest in the UK. There's that high from that. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, nothing can compare to it. And that,
definitely.
And that's when you know you're in the right area and doing the right things.
Definitely.
Because, you know, everything has a shelf life, but those memories that you've earned, no one can ever take them away from you, because you've 100%. Put the reps in, you've done the work, and it's.
Yeah, it's such a weird one, because like you have all these different moments in your life, but obviously, like, those kind of moments, like, the way that they're ingrained into your brain after that. Like, I could tell you every single player that played on that team. You know what I mean? I could tell you, you know, like, what the smell it was like walking into that gym, like what the vibe in the locker room, like everything, just like it was. But then I've say this to my university team all the time, like, this bond you're going to build with these teams, if you have success, is going to be so huge, and it's going to have such a bigger impact on your life. The years that I played at the Sharks and we didn't win anything, or we had a mediocre season, I don't remember who was on those teams. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's you know, having those successful moments or those highs in your life can really have a huge impact.
Yeah, cool. So, broadcasting, what's that? What's that been like?
That's another one where, like, I kind of just fell into it. They just kind of, over the years, I'd done a few bits here and there for the league, and then we signed a big contract with Sky Sports,
which is huge for the British basketball.
Yeah, massive. That was probably 2019, I would say they did that. And then I got asked to be one of, like, the regular pundits for the league, and it was while I was still playing as well, which was challenging, because, you know, I was couldn't make every game or whatever. And obviously, I'd had a little bit of experience with it, but it was obviously a completely new world. But if there was anything that I was going to be able to talk about on camera, that would be basketball. So, obviously very lucky, and grateful that I was asked in the first place. Obviously, I had the career behind me, so it was an easy choice for them. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's
handsome
great.
Man as well, mate. It's all
Appreciate
there,
you, brother.
isn't it?
Checks in the mail.
Cheers, bro.
But yeah, no, it's something that built up over the years, and very blessed to be a part of that, and something I really enjoy doing as well. Nothing better than sitting down watching a game of basketball and talking about it.
Well, because you'd be doing that anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So you might as well get paid for it.
Exactly, that's it. Yeah.
And then that takes us down to, since you mentioned it earlier, the trash reality TV show. So I remember I saw an advert for it, and I was like, sure, that was mine. And then I looked into it, and it was. So I didn't watch it, and I can't really watch them shows, but I feel like I should have, because you.
Well, I'm the guy. I don't watch.
So how does that work? Does someone approach you and they're just like?
Yeah, well, Instagram got DM'd on Instagram by a casting agent, which I thought was fake, and I ignored it at the beginning, and then they persistent, and then it just went from DM on Instagram to a Zoom call to I went in for a physical meeting to okay, we're shooting now. And
so what was the premise of that show? I know it was called The Triangle, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, we had the wool pulled over our eyes a little bit. It was originally going to be called Love Match, and we did all these personality tests, met with psychiatrists and a matchmaker and everything, and then they were supposed to match you with your perfect match, and they were going to film you moving into a house with this person for a month.
Okay.
What we didn't know is that the show was actually called Love Triangle. The first season of it was in Australia, and you end up getting matched with two people and put into a triangle with these people. And essentially, I had to live with one girl for 1 week, another girl for a second week, and then both of them for the rest of the time.
It sounds all right.
It sounds all right on paper, but because we didn't know we didn't know that we were in triangles. There was a lot of drama.
Yeah, but that's what they come for, and people that watch them shows, that's what they want.
Yeah, exactly. So it was at the time extremely stressful, and obviously you do a show like that, you don't know how you're going to be portrayed, and you don't know how it's all going to come off, and what clips they're going to use, or what angles.
Yeah, because some of the editing can make you come off real bad.
Yeah, well, and they watching it back, there was a few bits where stuff was edited from different conversations and interjected into other conversations. But
do they, beforehand then, is it in some small print in the contract saying we can portray you however we want, so watch out? Because it's really bad, isn't it?
I mean, the way that the producers would pitch it to us is that they're like, you've said everything you've said, like you are portraying who you are, but obviously there's different angles, and
chop it up like a Kamala Harris interview to make it sound smart.
Some of it was chopped, but it wasn't like crazy. But it's just more so like every day, you're shooting for like, it could be like 3, 5, 8 hours days. I mean, the dinner scenes that we did were like 12, 14-hour days. Those were long days. And you're shooting a dramatic scene where everybody's yelling at each other, and then they're chucking you in front of a camera, and they're like, talk about your feelings, talk about your feelings, talk about your feelings.
So they get you riled up, and then
and they're always asking very leading questions to get you down certain rabbit holes. So it was very stressful, but at the end of the day, it was an experience, and I came out the other end unscathed. And I met some great people out of it. I'm still friends with some of the other cast members.
Did you actually learn anything you think about yourself in that environment? Was it?
I've learned that dating shows aren't for me. I think I learned that I need to be a better communicator at times. I think I need to not always be a people pleaser, and be able to, instead of automatically going into people pleasing mode and a yes man, I need to sometimes stick up for what I'm actually and sometimes that's not the answer what people want to hear, but And yeah, I think, I don't know. It was just, it's for a guy who doesn't talk about his feelings that much as it is, to go into having to do at least like 3 or 4 interviews in front of a camera and talk about your feelings. It was a very like, it was a very strange experience. But yeah, I think I learned a few bits about myself
That's cool
overall.
though. Like,
Yeah,
so like, because when you see those shows, I always wonder that about, because you know a lot of it is forced and a lot of it seems like it's just for entertainment purposes. But again, similar to what we were saying earlier about, you know, if you look at things in the right way, there'll always be something you can learn if you condition your mind in how to absorb that information. And
one
you know,
hundred
for you
percent.
at your not age, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but to come out and go, right, I've learned something about myself, then that's
Definitely.
it's a positive experience in the end,
Yeah,
isn't it?
definitely. And I don't regret doing it at all. I think, like I said, learned a lot. Met some amazing people, and gave gave the fans a lot of drama.
Brilliant. Love Triangle season 2. Sign me up.
No, 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 no. I'm good. I'm good.
So right. So what's next then? How do we think the next stage of Mike Tuck's life is going to look?
Well, right now I've got a really good thing going on with the Cannon Medical Arena, the Sharks, the Hatters. It's kind of all encompassing job here that I do for the
You
Sharks.
mentioned the arena. Sorry to interrupt, but this has only been here a couple of years. A year, did you
One
say?
year, yeah.
So like coming in, it's a purpose-built facility for basketball in Sheffield, and there were some other sports taking part. We saw some netball going on when I came in. But that must make you feel pretty proud too, because for this to happen is because of the success that the Sharks have had over the years, and you've contributed to that massively. So it must just coming in here must make you feel proud. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I was a small piece in a huge wheel, and a small cog in the wheel, but yeah, it's something that the Sharks had been talking about since I first arrived in Sheffield. Wanting their own facility, getting there, and I think about 2015 when they tore down Don Valley Stadium, this started becoming an actual idea for the Sharks. And granted, it took them about 8 years or whatever after, but they finally got here. And now to be able to walk in here, it's like it's crazy. And like you said, like I'm just a small piece, but to be a part of that history, makes you really proud. And now finally for Sheffield to have like a home of basketball, and for the Sharks to have a home, and the Hatters have a home here, it's really important. And for a guy who loves basketball to be in here and watch all the youth teams that come in here, and the influence that our senior men's team has on that, and then me coaching my university team here with guys that played on the junior teams and now they're here playing for me. It's like it's kind of everything going kind of full circle, right? So very proud to be a part of it here. And for right now, this is definitely where I want to be. Working here, doing commentary on games, which we do, helping grow the sport of basketball within the country, and then enjoying the level of coaching that I'm doing right now as well for University of Sheffield. I think coaching was never something really on my radar, but they kept knocking on my door about it, and finally I said yes. And I've had a lot of success with that team so far. I've taken them from the third league down to last year we were runners up going into the Prem. So um, we've had a lot of success at that level, and I'm hoping to continue to help build that program.
awesome. Well, good luck with it all. And I hope it
Thanks,
goes well,
man. I
mate.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
We always fist bump at the end,
All
but
right.
them big hands as
I
well.
love
I'm risking it.
it.